What if I told you that in just 30 days, you could begin reshaping the very structure of your brain, not just metaphorically, but biologically? This isn't just self-help optimism. It's neuroscience. It's the truth of neuroplasticity, the brain's innate ability to adapt, change, and rewire itself in response to repeated experience. Neuroplasticity is not reserved for the young or the gifted. It's a built-in feature of the human nervous system. And the most exciting part, it's experience dependent. That means your daily behaviors, thoughts, and emotional responses become the raw material for your brain's rewiring process. The habits you choose to implement, especially when performed with repetition, focus, and intention, serve as cues to your nervous system to make real, measurable changes. Now, here's the part most people miss. Neuroplasticity is not something that happens only passively over time. It's gated by attention, urgency, and physiological state. When you engage in a new behavior with focus, especially under slight challenge or stress, your brain releases neurochemicals like acetylcholine and norepinephrine. These chemicals act as spotlights, marking specific neural circuits for change. In simple terms, if you want your brain to rewire, you must apply effort and do so with full attention. When you repeat that behavior consistently across days and weeks, especially within a 30-day window, your brain begins the process of long-term potentiation. This is a fancy way of saying that certain neural pathways become stronger, more efficient, and easier to activate. The circuits you fire become the circuits you wire. But there's a catch, and this is crucial. The brain doesn't know the difference between a good habit and a bad one. It only recognizes repetition. So if you're engaging in procrastination, negative self-talk, excessive screen time, or poor sleep hygiene on a consistent basis, those habits are being reinforced just as powerfully as the ones that serve you. The brain is indifferent to the content. It only responds to frequency, intensity, and emotional salience. That's why the first few days of habit change are so uncomfortable. You're not just learning a new behavior. You're going against well-established neural pathways, literally trying to carve new trails into the dense forest of your mind. At first, the path is unclear. It's overgrown. It takes conscious effort to walk it. But with repetition, that trail becomes a road, and eventually it becomes a highway, an automatic pathway your brain prefers to travel. The 30-day window is particularly powerful because it's long enough to initiate and consolidate these changes, but only if the habit is performed regularly and under the right conditions. One of those conditions is what neuroscientists call the plasticity window, a state of heightened readiness in your brain to change. This state is often activated in moments of challenge or novelty. So if a new habit feels hard in the beginning, that's not a bad thing. That's the signal your brain is listening. That's when the change is actually happening. And here's another truth that most people never consider. Your identity begins to shift the moment your habits do. The brain doesn't just store memories or skills, it builds models of who you are. Every time you act in alignment with your goals, you're feeding a new identity. You're teaching your nervous system, this is who I am now. Over time, that identity becomes self-reinforcing, and the effort you needed on day 1 becomes second nature by day 20 or 30. Understanding neuroplasticity changes the game. It removes the myth that change is only about motivation. It's not. It's about physiology. It's about systems. It's about using your biology to work for you rather than against you. When you apply this understanding intentionally, when you create the conditions for plasticity and combine it with repetition, you unlock the ability to change rapidly, deeply, and sustainably. One of the most overlooked, yet most transformative habits for rewiring your mind and optimizing your life begins the moment you wake up. It doesn't involve supplements, apps, or even coffee. It involves light, natural light, and the precise timing of when you expose yourself to it. Your brain operates on a 24-hour internal clock known as the circadian rhythm. This rhythm governs not only your sleep-wake cycle, but also your mood, focus, metabolism, hormone release, and even your immune function. And the most powerful regulator of that rhythm is light, specifically sunlight. When light enters your eyes in the morning, it sends a signal to a specific part of the brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. This structure acts as your central circadian pacemaker. It interprets that light as a cue to start the day. Now here's where things get life-changing. The timing and intensity of that light matters. Getting sunlight within 30 to 60 minutes of waking triggers a cascade of neurochemical events. First, it causes a timed release of cortisol, your body's natural alertness hormone. Contrary to popular belief, cortisol is not inherently bad. In the morning, you want a healthy peak of cortisol because it helps you feel awake, focused, and motivated. When this spike happens early, it sets a strong signal for your entire circadian rhythm, making it easier to fall asleep at night and feel alert during the day. But that's not all. Early light exposure also stimulates the release of dopamine, a neuromodulator tied to motivation, pleasure, and goal-directed behavior. By anchoring your wake, uptime, and getting natural light exposure, preferably from the actual sun, up, not through a window or screen, you send a signal to your brain and body that it's time to engage, move, and pursue meaningful tasks. You are quite literally aligning your internal systems with the external world. This alignment is not a luxury, it is biological necessity. Up. The effect is cumulative. If you get this exposure every day for a month, your brain begins to anticipate it. Up. Your energy starts to rise even before the light hits your eyes. Your body adapts. Your sleep improves. Your mood stabilizes. Your motivation levels increase. Up. Your productivity window sharpens. It's not a placebo. Up. It's the outcome of sensing your biology to the most fundamental environmental cue there is, sunlight. And here's a powerful nuance. Uptiming consistency is just as important as the light itself. The brain thrives on rhythm. When you wake up at the same time every day, you reinforce the strength of your circadian clock. But when you're awake, uptime fluctuates, especially when it varies by more than 60 to 90 minutes. It sends conflicting signals to your brain, disrupting the entire internal cascade of hormones and neurotransmitters. You're telling your body one day it lives in New York and the next day in Tokyo. That confusion leads to brain fog, poor sleep quality, low energy, and unstable mood patterns. By pairing consistent wake, timing with early morning light exposure, you establish a reliable anchor for your day. This anchor doesn't just help you wake up. It determines how well you focus in the afternoon, how deeply you sleep at night, and how stable your emotional and cognitive states are throughout the day. It becomes a keystone habit, one that supports the effectiveness of all your other habits. For those who live in areas with limited sunlight, even on cloudy days, being outside is far more effective than indoor lighting. The intensity of natural outdoor light, even in overcast conditions, is exponentially higher than the light in your home or office. And if outdoor access is limited, using a bright artificial light box specifically designed to mimic natural sunlight can help, but it should be a last resort, not a replacement. This habit is deceptively simple, but it produces profound results. In just 1 month of consistent practice, it becomes more than a routine. It becomes a non-negotiable ritual that upgrades your entire biological operating system. There is a moment when you step into cold water and everything in your body and mind screams to stop. Your breath catches. Your muscles tense. Your mind races for an exit strategy. But something incredible happens when you stay. When you override that impulse, not recklessly, but deliberately, you tap into a mechanism that transforms both your physiology and your mindset. Deliberate cold exposure, whether through cold showers, ice baths, or cold plunges, is not just a mental toughness exercise, it's a neurological reset button. It triggers one of the most powerful and sustained shifts in your neurochemical landscape, particularly in the system that governs motivation, focus, and drive, the dopaminergic system. Dopamine is often misunderstood. It's not simply a pleasure chemical. It's the molecule of pursuit. It's released in anticipation of effort, progress, and achievement. When properly regulated, dopamine gives you the drive to act, the energy to persist, and the capacity to overcome obstacles. And unlike fleeting sources of dopamine, such as scrolling junk food or instant gratification, cold exposure creates a prolonged upward shift in baseline dopamine levels. When your body is exposed to cold, especially in the range of 10 to 15 degrees Celsius, 50 to 59 degrees Fahrenheit for just a few minutes, it initiates a stress response, but a productive one. Norepinephrine and epinephrine are released, increasing alertness and sharpening focus. Shortly after, dopamine levels begin to rise, not in a spike that crashes, but in a wave that can last for hours. This sustained increase in dopamine is what makes cold exposure such a powerful tool. It doesn't just stimulate the brain temporarily, it resets your neurochemical baseline. The benefits go far beyond mood and motivation. Cold exposure helps train your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision-making, impulse control, and emotional regulation. When you voluntarily step into discomfort, you strengthen the neural circuits that allow you to face challenge instead of avoiding it. You build a kind of mental armor, not through brute force, but through controlled exposure to adversity. The process is simple, but not easy. That's part of what makes it so effective. When you embrace something difficult on purpose, you activate what neuroscientists refer to as top-down control. You're telling your limbic system, the part of your brain that wants to retreat, that you're in charge. And that authority carries over into other parts of your life. Cold exposure becomes a training ground for discipline, resilience, and cognitive control. Another key element is the shift in how you perceive stress. By choosing to enter a cold environment, your brain learns to reframe discomfort as opportunity. Over time, this builds stress tolerance, not just physical, but emotional. You begin to approach difficult conversations, high-pressure tasks, or unexpected obstacles with a calmer, more grounded mindset. You've conditioned your nervous system to stay composed in challenge, because it has practiced doing so in controlled, repeatable ways. And there's a physiological bonus that many overlook. Cold exposure has been shown to increase levels of brown fat, a type of tissue that burns energy to produce heat. This enhances metabolic efficiency and can improve insulin sensitivity and fat oxidation. The body becomes more adaptive, more efficient, and more resilient, not just in the cold, but in day-to-day stress management. Timing and frequency matter. Cold exposure is most effective when done early in the day, ideally after waking and before intense cognitive or physical work. Even 2 to 5 minutes, a few times per week, can create a profound shift in baseline dopamine levels, mood regulation, and energy output. And it's not about chasing extremes, it's about consistency and intention. The goal is not to endure pain for the sake of suffering, but to engage in discomfort with awareness, purpose, and control. The effects are cumulative. Each exposure strengthens neural pathways that promote endurance, alertness, and mental clarity. And unlike stimulants or motivational hacks, these changes are embodied. They are felt deeply, and they endure well beyond the moment of challenge. If you're looking to maximize your productivity, creativity, and mental output, the key is not working harder or longer. It's working in alignment with your brain's natural rhythms. One of the most powerful yet underutilized tools for cognitive optimization is the 90-minute deep work block. It's not just a productivity hack. It's a protocol that leverages the fundamental biology of your nervous system, specifically a cycle called the ultradian rhythm. The human brain doesn't operate at a steady, unbroken pace throughout the day. Instead, it goes through waves of heightened alertness followed by natural dips in energy and focus. These cycles last approximately 90 to 120 minutes and are tied to fluctuations in brainwave activity, neurotransmitter levels, and autonomic nervous system shifts. During the high point of this cycle, your brain enters a state of deep concentration. This is when it's most capable of handling complex problem-solving, learning, memory encoding, and creative thinking. When you align your most important work, strategic thinking, writing, studying, planning, or skill development with these 90-minute windows, you radically increase your cognitive efficiency. Your attention becomes sharper, distractions fade. Time seems to pass differently. You're not just being productive, you're entering what psychologists refer to as flow state. But here's the catch. The effectiveness of these deep work blocks depends on how you prepare your brain beforehand and how you protect the environment during. Focus doesn't just happen by accident. It requires deliberate setup. The brain needs a neurochemical signal that it's time to engage. That means removing distractions, setting clear intentions, and entering the work period with a mindset of full immersion. Before a deep work session, engaging in brief preparatory actions, such as 5 minutes of deep breathing, movement, or simply reviewing your top priority, helps transition the brain into a focused mode. These actions increase acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter essential for focus and plasticity. Once that system is engaged up, your cognitive resources are far more directed and resistant to interruption. The environment plays a critical role too. Dopamine, the neuromodulator of motivation and reward, is highly sensitive to distraction. Every time you shift attention to a notification, a text, or a passing thought, dopamine is released in a shallow, fragmented way. It feels like stimulation, but it's actually a drain. On the other hand, when you commit to a single task for a full 90-minute cycle, you allow dopamine to accumulate in a sustained, focused way, increasing your drive to continue and reinforcing the learning process. There's also a physiological reason for keeping the block around 90 minutes. During this period, your sympathetic nervous system, the branch responsible for alertness and focus, is naturally dominant. After about 90 minutes, your brain begins to fatigue, and your parasympathetic system, which supports rest and recovery, starts to take over. Trying to push through that transition window without rest is counterproductive. You'll notice increased errors, mental fog, and reduced creativity. The ideal pattern is intense focus for 90 minutes, followed by deliberate disengagement. A short walk, a light snack, breathwork, or just staring into the distance. This reset primes the brain for another round of peak output. It's a cycle of focus and recovery, activation and restoration. When done consistently, it conditions your nervous system to enter deep work more easily and with less resistance. This protocol isn't just for high performers or academics. It's universally applicable. Whether you're an entrepreneur, artist, coder, student, or athlete, your brain operates on these same biological principles. And when you build your schedule around them, instead of fighting against them, your effectiveness compounds. A single 90-minute deep work block each day, fully protected and purposefully engaged, often produces more meaningful output than 8 hours of distracted multitasking. It's not about quantity of time. It's about quality of focus. The depth and clarity of thought that emerge from these sessions are often where your most important breakthroughs begin to take shape. Sleep is not rest. Sleep is active. Sleep is repair. And most importantly, sleep is the time when your brain rewires itself in response to the inputs of the day. It's not just about feeling rested the next morning. It's about solidifying learning, regulating emotions, balancing hormones, and enhancing both mental and physical performance. If you are building new habits, optimizing your focus, or trying to change your life in any capacity, the quality of your sleep is either your greatest asset or your silent saboteur. During sleep, especially deep sleep and REM's rapid eye movement phases, your brain undergoes a highly organized process of maintenance and adaptation. It clears out metabolic waste products through the glymphatic system, consolidates short-term memory into long-term storage, and strengthens or weakens neural pathways based on what you practiced or focused on during the day. This is the very definition of neuroplasticity, the physical rewiring of your brain, and the vast majority of it happens while you sleep. The brain doesn't passively drift through sleep stages. Instead, it follows a complex architecture composed of 90-minute sleep cycles, each one moving through light sleep, deep sleep, also called slow, wave sleep, and REM. Deep sleep is where physical restoration occurs. The body repairs tissue, strengthens the immune system, and balances hormones like growth hormone and testosterone. REM sleep, on the other hand, is where your brain simulates learning, processes emotions, and creatively solves problems. If you're learning a new skill, implementing a new habit, or trying to change behavioral patterns, these REM stages are essential. They're when your brain replays information, not exactly as it happened, but in a way that reinforces connections between neurons. This is why you can read a book or practice a task during the day, sleep on it, and suddenly recall or perform better the next morning. Your brain has been rehearsing the process behind the scenes. But the benefits of sleep go far beyond memory. Sleep is the single most effective reset for dopamine sensitivity, cortisol regulation, and emotional control. Without sufficient and high-quality sleep, the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for focus, rational decision-making, and willpower, becomes less active. Simultaneously, the amygdala, the brain's threat detection and emotional reactivity center, becomes hyperactive. This is why lack of sleep leads to poor impulse control, mood swings, anxiety, and difficulty concentrating. It's not a character flaw, it's biology. Up. Even one night of poor sleep reduces glucose metabolism in the brain, especially in areas linked to complex thinking and emotional stability. Chronic sleep deprivation lowers testosterone, increases cravings for sugar and highly processed foods, disrupts insulin sensitivity. Up. And increases inflammation throughout the body. It erodes discipline at the neurochemical level and makes habit change feel infinitely harder than it should. Up. Creating a consistent sleep schedule is one of the most powerful interventions you can make for your brain. Up. Going to bed and waking up at roughly the same time each day, even on weekends, strengthens your circadian rhythm and ensures that all the systems tied to that rhythm's mood, energy, focus, digestion function optimally. A regular sleep-wake cycle aligns your internal clocks, primes your metabolism up, and supports the natural release of melatonin in the evening and cortisol in the morning. Environmental factors matter too. Temperature, light exposure, and timing of food and caffeine all play critical roles in sleep quality. Your sleeping environment should be cool, dark, and quiet. Exposure to artificial light late at night, especially from screens, suppresses melatonin and delays sleep onset. Conversely, early morning light exposure, which anchors your circadian rhythm, helps you fall asleep more easily at night. Sleep is also when emotional learning is processed. The brain uses dreams, especially in REM sleep, to replay emotionally charged experiences, integrate them, and reduce their intensity. This is why, after a good night's sleep, up problems often seem more manageable and emotional pain more tolerable. Sleep allows you to reset your perspective, both chemically and psychologically, up, giving you the clarity to make better decisions and the emotional regulation to stay consistent with your goals. Most people are taught to fear stress. Up. We're conditioned to believe it's something toxic, something to be avoided, something that inevitably breaks us down. But what if that belief is fundamentally flawed? What if stress isn't your enemy, but your training partner? What if the key to unlocking more strength, up, mental resilience, and purpose in your life isn't avoiding stress, but learning how to engage with it intentionally, up? To understand how to use stress as a tool, we must first understand what it really is. Stress is a biological signal, up. It's your body's response to challenge or uncertainty, mediated primarily through the autonomic nervous system and neuroendocrine signaling, up. In a stressful moment, your body releases epinephrine, norepinephrine, and cortisol, which elevate your heart rate, increase blood flow to your muscles, up, dilate your pupils, and heighten alertness. These are not dysfunctions. These are enhancements designed by evolution to prepare you for action, focus, up, and survival. What matters most is not the presence of stress, but your perception of stress. Research shows that when individuals interpret stress as harmful, up, their physiology follows that narrative. Blood vessels constrict, immune responses weaken, and cortisol remains elevated longer than necessary. But when individuals perceive stress as a challenge, as an opportunity for growth, the body responds differently. Blood flow remains more stable, recovery is faster, and cognitive function remains sharper. This means your mindset about stress literally changes how your body handles it, up. This shift in perception activates the prefrontal cortex, allowing you to assess the situation rationally and strategically. When this part of the brain is engaged, you're no longer hijacked by the limbic system's reactive impulses. Instead, up, you're operating from a position of executive control. This is the foundation of high performance under pressure, not the absence of stress, but the capacity to remain composed within it. Stress can act as a form of neural training. When you expose yourself to controlled stress, like public speaking, physical exertion, up, or cold exposure, you are deliberately strengthening the neural circuits responsible for focus, discipline, and emotional regulation. These circuits are reinforced through a principle called experience-dependent plasticity. Neurons that fire together, up, wire together. Each time you stay present in a stressful moment without panicking, you're reinforcing the habit of staying in control. That becomes part of your default wiring. There is also a biochemical benefit to stress when managed well. Acute short-term stress increases dopamine, up, which enhances motivation and sharpens learning. This is why stress, when paired with purpose, can actually increase your capacity to grow and adapt, up. The key is dosage and recovery. Just as you wouldn't lift heavy weights for hours on end without rest, you shouldn't live in a constant state of psychological overload. But targeted, Intentional doses of stress, balanced with deep recovery, are not only healthy, they are essential for progress. To make stress a tool, you must apply deliberate reframing. Instead of thinking, I'm overwhelmed, train yourself to think, my body is preparing me to rise. This isn't about pretending you don't feel discomfort. It's about channeling it. Physiologically, anxiety and excitement are nearly identical. The difference is your interpretation. The way you label the sensation determines whether it debilitates you or fuels you up. You can also leverage breathwork and visual anchoring to navigate high stress moments. Fast, shallow breathing signals threat. Deep, deliberate exhalations engage the parasympathetic nervous system, allowing you to stay grounded. Techniques like the physiological sigh, 2 quick inhales through the nose, followed by a long exhale, can immediately down-regulate stress in the moment. They're hardwired mechanisms designed to bring your system back to balance. Finally, stress reveals what you value. You don't stress over things that don't matter to you. So when stress arises, ask, what is this pointing me toward? What am I being called to face, solve, or become? Stress in this light becomes feedback. It becomes a compass, and with the right mindset and tools, it becomes one of the most powerful catalysts for transformation available to you. Fasting is often framed as a nutritional or metabolic strategy, but its power reaches far beyond body composition. At its core, fasting is a signal, a reset switch for the brain, body, and behavior. When approached with intention, it becomes a high-leverage protocol for developing clarity, sharpening discipline, and strengthening the neurobiological pathways that govern focus, impulse control, and resilience. Fasting isn't about deprivation. It's about reclaiming control over the systems that govern your decisions, cravings, and cognitive energy. The human brain evolved in an environment where food was not always available. For millennia, survival depended on our ability to remain mentally sharp and physically capable while in a fasted state. It's in this context that the brain became optimized for performance in the absence of food. When you fast, especially beyond the 12-hour mark, your body enters a neurochemical state that enhances alertness, focus, and efficiency. It does this by shifting its fuel source and activating powerful signaling mechanisms designed to keep you mentally engaged and physically ready. One of the primary drivers of these effects is norepinephrine, a neurotransmitter and hormone that increases during fasting. Norepinephrine elevates arousal, improves reaction time, and boosts attention. Simultaneously, dopamine, the molecule of motivation, rises in a steady, sustainable way. This creates a mental environment that favors productivity, heightened awareness, and inner drive. Unlike the crash that follows a heavy meal or sugar intake, the fasted state produces a clarity that can feel almost meditative, yet alert and action-oriented. Fasting also triggers the release of brain-derived neurotrophic factors, BDNF, a protein essential for neuroplasticity, the process through which the brain grows, adapts, and rewires itself. BDNF strengthens synaptic connections, supports learning and memory, and has even been shown to protect neurons from degeneration. When you fast, you aren't starving your brain. You're feeding its long-term capacity to adapt and perform. But the benefits are not purely neurological. Fasting also strengthens discipline at the behavioral level. It trains the ability to override short-term impulses in favor of long-term goals. This is where fasting becomes a mental model, not just a physiological intervention. When you choose to abstain from eating, not because you have to, but because you decided to, you're strengthening the prefrontal cortex, the command center for willpower and deliberate action. You're reinforcing the neural circuits that say, I act by choice, not by urge. And this doesn't have to be extreme. Even a simple protocol, such as intermittent fasting, eating all meals within an 8 to 10 hour window, can create dramatic shifts in energy, cognition, and self-control. The first few days may be uncomfortable as the body transitions away from habitual eating patterns, but very quickly, hunger signals begin to align with function. You become less reactive to cravings. You stop using food to manage emotions. You begin to feel when you're truly hungry, not just when you're bored, stressed, or conditioned to eat. In addition to cognitive performance, fasting improves metabolic flexibility, the body's ability to switch between burning glucose and fat for fuel. This means more stable energy throughout the day, fewer crashes, and a decreased reliance on constant snacking or stimulants to maintain focus. Up. Your system becomes more efficient, more adaptive, and more responsive to the true demands of the moment. Up. Another often overlooked benefit is time and decision clarity. When you remove the need to constantly think about what to eat, when to eat, up, or how to fit meals into your schedule, you reduce cognitive load. That extra bandwidth can now be directed toward higher level thinking, problem solving, or simply being present in your daily routines. Fasting becomes a vehicle for simplifying life physiologically, mentally, and behaviorally. On a hormonal level, fasting helps regulate insulin sensitivity, lowers inflammation, and supports mitochondrial function, all of which feed back into brain performance. Hormones like ghrelin, often called the hunger hormone, up, don't just rise and fall passively, they adapt to routine. When you train your body through consistent fasting, ghrelin spikes become predictable, up, manageable, and eventually less intense. You no longer feel like a hostage to hunger. You become the operator, not the passenger, of your physiology. Up. Fasting reveals your patterns. It exposes your reflexes around comfort and consumption. And in that space between craving and response, up, a powerful opportunity emerges, the chance to develop self-governance, to learn to sit with discomfort, and to practice choosing intention over reaction. Change without measurement is often just motion without direction. You can feel busy, you can feel exhausted, but that doesn't mean you're progressing. The brain is highly responsive to feedback, but if you don't define what success looks like, it's nearly impossible to stay consistent, let alone improve. This is why tracking your progress through intentional, meaningful metrics is a cornerstone habit in any transformative process. It activates the parts of your nervous system responsible for motivation, reward prediction, and sustained focus. The human brain thrives on certainty and predictability, but it also needs evidence of growth to remain engaged. Dopamine, up, the neurochemical that governs motivation and reward, is not just released when you achieve a goal. Up, it spikes in anticipation, when the brain expects that a reward is coming. This reward prediction system means that small wins, up, clearly tracked and reflected on, create a loop of intrinsic motivation. You don't just feel like you're making progress, you see it. That visual or numerical feedback is a signal that your efforts are working, and that signal matters neurologically. But the key here is intentionality. You must track the right things, metrics that align with your purpose, not just what's easy to measure. Too often, people track surface, level outputs, and ignore deeper inputs. For example, tracking hours worked is common, but tracking deep focus time, periods when you were truly locked into a cognitively demanding task, is far more revealing. Similarly, tracking the number of workouts completed might be helpful, up, but tracking consistency over weeks or progressive load offers more clarity on whether your system is adapting and improving. Up. Intentional tracking requires self-honesty. It means identifying the behaviors that truly lead to results and then observing them over time without judgment. Whether you use a journal, an app, or a spreadsheet, up, the process of writing something down or logging it manually engages the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for planning, sequencing, up, and self-monitoring. This creates a feedback loop between what you do, what you see, and how you course correct. Metrics also help decouple emotion from progress. There will be days when motivation dips, when fatigue sets in, up, when the emotional brain wants to override logic. In those moments, your metrics serve as a mirror. They show what's true, not what's felt. That objectivity is crucial for maintaining discipline through cycles of high and low energy, high and low confidence. The data doesn't lie, it clarifies, up, and clarity breeds strategy. Once you've collected even a few weeks of intentional metrics, patterns start to emerge, up. You may notice that your best mental output happens after a specific morning routine. You may discover that your physical performance correlates with your sleep quality more than your training volume. Up. These insights aren't random. They're neural realities that allow you to refine your process. Instead of guessing, you begin to optimize. Instead of reacting, you begin to respond. There's also a deeper psychological shift that happens through tracking. You stop chasing perfection, up, and you start building identity-based habits. You're no longer just someone who's trying to improve. You become someone who tracks what matters, who pays attention, who takes ownership. And that identity, repeated through consistent data points, becomes self-reinforcing. The habit of tracking turns into the habit of staying aligned. Metrics can also serve as anchors for gratitude and reflection. When you look back at a chart, a journal entry, or a log of completed actions, you engage a different form of learning, retrospective insight. This activates the default mode network in the brain, which is responsible for self-awareness and narrative building. You begin to see not just what you did, but who you became in the process. Tracking becomes more than just data. It becomes a map of your growth, your discipline, and your resilience. Not everything needs to be tracked, and not all metrics are numerical. Emotional states, energy levels, clarity of thought, these too can be measured in simple, structured ways. Even a 1-5 scale rating of how focused you felt during key tasks can yield powerful awareness over time. What matters is that you choose metrics that are behaviorally grounded and neurologically meaningful, things that reflect effort, not just outcome.